Hi everyone, my name is Priya Mistry. I'm a multidisciplinary artist and I work across performance and visual art. I work under the name What's the Big Mystery? My training and background is dance, theatre, film, photography and visual art forms, and I straddle those to make performance, film, enter into collaborations with lots of other artists, creatives and attend to residencies. I have a socially engaged practice, so I'm a socially engaged worker, a creative producer, and a consultant. Today, I'd like to talk about a 2-week residency that I did as part of a program called DeStress Fest, which took place in 2018 at Attenborough Arts in Leicester. Jishan, the curator, came to me with an invitation, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to do like this takeover of the gallery for a couple of weeks. At the time, I just had all these ideas that were like stacking up, and I'd had no sort of time or space to really work on them. And I just had kind of either like sketchbooks or palettes or just, that were kind of waiting for a space to do something with. And so that became my DeStress Fest residency. Across the 2 weeks, I essentially worked on 4 sort of sub-projects with 4 different artists or artist groups. And those included The Artist is Absent with Becky Benedict, who's a visual artist, Intimate Conversations with Furniture, which I did with Lewis Holtz, who's a dance movement artist, Love Lament Psycho Girlfriend, which was with Denny Spooner, Nadine New and Scarlett Turner, and finally Sunday Assemblage with Rebecca Davies. I spent the 2 weeks like rotating between each of the projects and collaborations. So I didn't do one and then do the next one and then move on to the next one. I did one each day and then came back round and did another day, with the exception of Sunday Assemblage, which happened just on one day on the Sunday as a live event. So the gallery was this kind of evolving workspace. We never packed up. So the next person would come in and they would be really curious about what had arrived in the space and what was going on, what had happened, and this kind of allowed for conversations or connections that we otherwise wouldn't have had when they were like re-entering the space. And then sometimes those objects and materials that were currently the vocabulary of one of the other projects started to make their way into that work. And that could have been anything. So we had one wall that had become covered in large painted, slightly poetic writing, and it started to form the backdrop to some of the movement in Intimate Conversations or Love Lament and so forth. Or there was a stack of digestive biscuits on a plank that made its way from between one project to another. There were plinths with these sort of molded arrangements. It really allowed for these kind of incidental things to happen and these connections to form, because like a studio it's quite a clean space. Studios and galleries are like almost purpose built to be like canvases. So it's not like when you work outside or you work in a site or an unusual location where where things happen, or you make loads of adaptations, or you might respond, or you might flex. And so this kind of really allowed for these unplanned connections to take place, which was really playful and, you know, and exciting. And I guess it just allowed for like arrangements, vocabularies, and connections to come about that would otherwise have not happened. Yeah, I found myself, I think in the back of my mind, I was thinking about things like Black Mountain College or Judson Dance Theatre, that whole kind of Pina Bausch off in the countryside in Whooperdale, or the kind of Fluxus movement collectives. And they're all like pretty old school references, but the idea is that of, collectives, artists, people kind of coming together in a building, a space that's a resource in itself, bringing their art forms, their knowledge, their tools, themselves, and then it becomes like a bit of a melting pot, really. And I guess the kind of, more modern urban version of that is more like a kind of warehouse project. Within the context of DeStress Fest, and because the festival was, about artists who identified as disabled, sometimes making work about their experiences, sometimes not, it really made me think about, how I was going to be working during that time in a closed door gallery space, but how I would want to choose, have moments throughout the 2 weeks where I was going to be able to share practice in an open door or live event kind of way. But I just really realized that, for me, in my experience, because I live with depression, anxiety, and it can really impede on my ability to do everyday things sometimes. And people don't realize that that's something that I'm dealing with, because when I'm not okay, people just don't see me. And I really wanted a way for people who felt like, they couldn't get out the door, they couldn't leave, those people dealing in particular with invisible disabilities or some kind of chronic condition that was going to mean that they couldn't get out the door and they couldn't make it, to the space or to the gallery, that they could still access, the creative process and what was going on. So I decided that I was going to, as best possible, share process through social mediums like, Facebook and Instagram at the time. And and also to go live on social forms when I was doing live events and performance sharings as part of the 2-week residency.